It's a crazy thought, but most turbo failures don't happen when you're hammering it on the highway. Nope, they happen quietly in your driveway right after you've already parked. And what's wild is almost nobody even knows it's happening.
That is exactly right. I mean, think about this. The second you turn that key, the oil pump just stops. But the turbo shaft inside, that thing can still be spinning at an insane 150,000 RPM. And it's doing it with zero lubrication inside a housing that's cooking at 900 degrees Celsius. So this is the whole story right here. You have to wrap your head around these three things that just don't belong together. You've got incredible speed, absolutely zero oil pressure, and scorching heat all at the same time. I mean, that is the perfect recipe for a catastrophic and, trust me, very expensive failure.
Okay, let's get into it. To really get why shutting your car down is so dangerous, you first need a super quick primer on how a turbocharger actually works. We're going to focus on the parts that are most at risk. So at its heart, a turbo is actually pretty simple. You've got the hot side, where the turbine wheel gets blasted by your engine's exhaust, making it spin. Then you've got the cold side, with a compressor wheel that sucks in air and forces it into your engine. But the most important part for us, the real hero of our story, is right in the middle. The central bearing housing, where a shaft connects those two wheels, spinning on a razor-thin film of pressurized oil.
Wait a second. 10 microns? So you're telling me the only thing stopping a shaft that's spinning at mind-boggling speeds from just grinding itself into metal dust is a film of oil that's thinner than a single human hair? No way. That is absolutely insane.
Exactly. And that incredibly fragile film of oil vanishes the instant you turn off the engine. This is what kicks off a really destructive process called hot soak, and it starts the very moment you get out and walk away from your car.
Okay, now this timeline, this is what really blows my mind. So at time 0, ignition off. The oil pump is dead. But that shaft, it's still spinning away with no lubrication. But look at that last point. The very core of the turbo, the bearing housing, doesn't even hit its hottest temperature until 5 to 20 minutes after the engine is already off. That's just shocking. The most dangerous moment for my turbo is when I'm already inside, making a sandwich.
And that is precisely the danger. See, without fresh oil flowing through to carry heat away, all that heat stored in the exhaust manifold just soaks inward, right into the turbo's core. The oil that's trapped in there doesn't just get hot and thin, it literally bakes. It goes through a nasty chemical change called cooking, and it transforms from a life-saving lubricant into a hard, destructive solid.
And this breaks down perfectly how that happens. The oil literally cooks in stages. It boils, it reacts with oxygen, and then it carbonizes into a solid. Think of it like a sludge that hardens into rock. These deposits then build up, clogging all the tiny little oil passages inside the turbo. So the real damage, the thing that kills it, happens on the next startup, when the bearings get starved of oil and just grind themselves to death.
So basically, what you're saying is oil coking is like cholesterol for your engine. It's this process where the good stuff, the fluid that's supposed to protect everything, turns into a solid blockage that causes a massive failure. The thing that was supposed to be the cure actually becomes the poison.
Precisely. And just look at these numbers, these tolerances. We are talking about clearances measured in hundredths of a millimeter. The difference between a brand new, healthy turbo and one that's completely toast is less than the thickness of a piece of paper. That's just how much damage those little abrasive carbon bits can do over time.
All right, so now that we get the invisible damage that's happening on the inside, let's talk about the real-world signs, the things you can actually see and hear before it's too late. Okay, this is the question, right? All this damage is happening silently, deep inside the engine bay after I've walked away. So how in the world would I even know this is happening to my car before it's game over?
Well, the damage builds up over time, and thankfully, the symptoms usually get worse step by step. It might start as just a faint whining noise, kind of like a dentist drill. That's the shaft getting unbalanced because the bearings are worn. Then, you might see a puff of blue smoke when you start the car. That's oil leaking past worn-out seals because the shaft is now wobbling around. By the time you hear an actual rattling or grinding noise, well, that's the sound of metal hitting metal. And that last stage, yeah, you're not going to miss that one.
Now for the good news. This is almost 100% preventable. Now that we understand exactly what the problem is, we can focus on the simple, easy things you can do to protect your engine and your bank account. Your first, and honestly most important line of defense, is the oil you use. This chart says it all. Different oils can handle different amounts of heat. Old-school mineral oil starts to break down and coke at around 140 degrees Celsius. But a good quality full synthetic, it can handle temperatures up to 220 degrees or even more. When your turbo is heat-soaking after shutdown, that difference isn't just a small thing, it's everything. Using a full synthetic oil is absolutely non-negotiable.
And your second line of defense is simply time. Giving that turbo a chance to cool down. And listen, this isn't just some old folklore your grandpa told you, it's a mechanical necessity. Letting your engine idle for a bit keeps the oil pump running, circulating that cool oil, and pulling all that destructive heat out of the turbo's bearings before you turn the key. Seriously, even just 60 seconds after driving around town makes a huge difference. And after a long highway drive, you want to give it at least 2 to 3 minutes.
So let's just put this all together into a simple checklist. First, always idle the car to let it cool down after a drive. Second, use only high-quality, full synthetic oil. Third, change that oil often, maybe even a little sooner than the manufacturer says, especially if you drive your car hard. And finally, if you've got a higher mileage car, it's a good idea to have a mechanic inspect those little oil feed and drain lines just to make sure they're not getting clogged up with that coking we talked about.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to this. Letting your car idle for 3 minutes after a drive costs you practically nothing, pennies in fuel. A brand new turbo? That can cost thousands of dollars to replace. So when you really look at the math, the question isn't whether you have time to wait. The real question is, can you afford not to?